So before we move on, I have this token of our appreciation, which I know you will proudly display, and it's inscribed by Lieutenant Colonel Fettig. I will not read it, but everyone can take a chance to come up to the table and read it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'll take that from you. Put it back. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce Gunnery Sergeant Darren Bang. Are you not next, Darren? I didn't think I was. Okay. Well, Drum Major told me you were, so you're next.
I'm here to present the gift from the trombone section to Chuck. And shortly after my audition here, I received a call from Chuck, and which lasted for about an hour and a half, which, if you know me, is pretty amazing because I never have that much to say. But I'm guessing it was a one-sided conversation. But the guidance that he shared with me helped me even before I got walked through the door. And this is the way he is with every new musician that has come into the trombone section. His leadership throughout the section has always been greatly appreciated, and he always wants to make sure everyone could be successful here. I know the trombone section is grateful for his commitment to the Marine Band and his willingness to help us in every way possible. The trombone section has compiled a few pictures from the greatest moments of your career, which are surrounding the picture that you all have in your program of his family and, of course, Chesty. I'm surprised Chesty didn't make it today. He's busy?
He's at home sleeping.
So it's our hope that these snapshots will give you fond memories of your time here and remind you of all the friends that you have with us. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Give me a hand. Oh, and the frame was made by Carl Johnson.
Nice. Very nice.
It says Master Gunnery Sergeant Charles Casey, the President's Own, 1993 to 2016.
Thank you.
Brian? I'd like to invite up
Pat Corbett first, then Brian.
Master Gunnery Sergeant
Isn't
retired.
that the way it is in the program?
No, I was last.
All right.
I'm happy to be here today and talk to you about Chuck. And when he asked me, I was just thrilled to do it as I would with any of the members of the trombone section there that I served with. I met Chuck maybe a year or two before he actually joined the band. We ended up on a lot of freelance jobs, and I can tell you I was really impressed from the very beginning. He was what I would call a fearless player. He had great chops, great sound. He was really sensitive, really easy to play with. It was just one of those things that, occasionally you'll find somebody that you just really, it's easy to play with. And so in the back of my mind, as we continued to play together, I just was thinking, man, he would make a great fit in the Marine Band. So as time went on, it seemed like I was running into Chuck more and more. And we had an opening coming up, and a couple months before the audition, I just mentioned to him, hey, you should try to take the Marine Band. He was like, well, I don't know, I really like the orchestral thing, and that's kind of where my heart is. So I just kind of left it at that, and we just kept running into each other. We ran into each other at an audition in San Francisco and spent an afternoon together, and it was just kind of providential, I guess, because a couple weeks before the audition, I just said, Chuck, you should take the audition. I know where you are right now with it, but you should just take it, and if you do well, then you can decide. And I think Pat was kind of working on him too. And so, I said, all these people that you're freelancing with, they're all members of the Marine Band. think about this seriously, because they're all good players, and you seem to like them all. So anyway, to make a long story short, he took the audition, and he won it, and it was not one of those controversial decisions. It wasn't a split committee or anything. I mean, he won the job. It was almost unanimous, and everybody wanted him there. So he was a clear winner, and so he won the job, and then he asked for a few days to think about it. So you might know what's coming next, but I think he called me every day for those 4 days, and I think he called Pat twice a day. And what I didn't really realize, which I came to find out later, was he really weighs decisions carefully and somewhat obsessively. But when he finally makes the decision, like, he is all in. And I didn't really know what that meant until he got here. So, but all the passion that Chuck brings to everything he does, whether it's family or his contracting or being in music or whatever, I mean, it's so much detail, and he's just very unusual in that regard. I think he's just a perfectionist in everything that he does, and he pulls it off. And he expects the same for people around him. So he quickly, once he got here, he learned all the parts of the job, even the parts that at times might not have made him as popular at the time. But, he knew everything about the uniform, ceremonially. He probably read the Commandant's book list, right? I didn't even know there was a list until I talked to Chuck. But just a very impressive person, because he wanted to do the total job. So somebody like that, of course, is subject to being a good leader. And so a couple of qualities that I wanted to talk about a little bit. One is that he's somebody that's not afraid to tell you what you need to hear. And so he's very honest in that way. And the other thing is, and you might not know this, but he's fluent in at least 4 languages that I know of. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So as Colonel Barkley mentioned, he knows all the parts about the job, and probably all of us at one time or another have been corrected. And I have to admire that, because as life goes on, you realize that honesty really is the best policy. And a few times, I would mention, Chuck, what do you think? Am I doing a good job here? Or what could I do to make it better? And he's going to tell you. And it helped me a lot. And I think I did the same for him. And that kind of mutual respect. And a lot of times, honesty is not necessarily, it doesn't make you as popular of a person as you might be. And sometimes, you can hurt some feelings along the way, that kind of thing. But Chuck wasn't afraid of that because of the mission of the band. Anything that would make the band better, look better, or sound better, he was willing to say. And if you're in a situation where everybody hears what's going on, and whether it's like an intonation thing or alignment thing or whatever, a lot of times we just hold back and not say what we think should happen. He's willing to say. And I really, I respect that a lot about Chuck, because I think it made the band better, made me better, and I really appreciate that, Chuck. Okay, about these 4 languages. So the first language is, of course, music, the one that most of the people here speak. And, he can talk shop on the music level, with anybody. I think we all know what that entails. The second one, I was kind of witness to. I think Chuck had been in the band like 3 or 4 years. And we kind of connected a lot on musical issues, maybe family issues some. But I was not aware of this. So we'd gotten done with the funeral, and the XO at the time had led the funeral procession, and he came on the bus, and he needed a ride back. And so Chuck's sitting about halfway back on the bus, and the XO says, "Great job, Marines." And as is typical with the Marine band folks, kind of a little rumbling, but nothing really too much. And then in the back of the bus, Chuck goes, "Hoorah, Colonel!" So I thought it was going to stop there, and it didn't. And the XO recognized Chuck. He said, "Oh, Staff Sergeant Casey, is that you back there?" And he says, "Roger that, sir." And so what proceeded was about 10 minutes of what I'll call Marine speak. There was all the acronyms that you could possibly come up with that served the military. Every single staff NCO that was stationed here at the barracks, he went through, who they were, what are they doing, when are they going to PCS, and all these things. And I was just kind of blindsided by this because I didn't know Chuck knew this language. And so I kind of afterwards, I said, "Hey, Chuck, so what was that all about?" And and I expected him to say something, this is just the way we, talk. But it wasn't. He said, "Well, I just try to get to know the Marines coming in, and Kathy and I tend to have them over the house, and whatever." And it was personal for him. And I was really impressed by that, because if you want to get to know someone, you got to learn to speak their language. And he certainly did that. So the third language is his contracting business that he does, and that's been mentioned before. But I really had never seen, he did a deck for us, and he did a front wall installation. So the work part of it was great. It was phenomenal, and he really knows his stuff. But the thing that kind of struck me was this conversation he had with the Home Depot contracting section. And he's getting in there talking about this bulkhead and this retrofit here and the shim this as though it's flush with that and countersink, I'm like, what's that? Because, it's just like, big boomy voice and knows what he's talking about. And then I said, so what was that all about? He said, "Well, you basically need to get these three things. Go to Home Depot. We talked about it, So anyway, I was like, man, this guy. Most of us speak, a couple languages, but he can get around in a lot of different languages. Well, the last thing I'll call is his family language. And I had the pleasure to room with Chuck on a few short trips that we did, like to Cincinnati and stuff. And you get to know people pretty well when you're in close quarters like that. And I was not one to overhear conversations in terms of their content, but I was just really struck with the fact that when he talked to his family, like all the rough edges just kind of come off. And he's just really caring, really tender, and I just thought, I want to be like that. So, Chuck, you've had a great career, and really honored to speak on your behalf. And you just set a great example for other Marines here and for me in particular. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Master Gunnery Sergeant retired Pat Corbett.
All right, good afternoon. I guess the problem with going fourth is most things have already been said, so I didn't bring anything up, and I will stay with Chuck's directive to be brief. I told him on the phone that my standard speech was 30 minutes, and anything less, I would not show up. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me speak. It's an honor to be here with you to honor your career. And so somebody asked me earlier if I was going to tell some good stories about Chuck, and and I said I just don't know what to do. So I'm just going to leave it with it's the Chuck experience. I think that. So you just kind of wrap your head around that a little bit, and that you can all envision the ones that are appropriate or inappropriate to say. So, thanks, Chuck. And I also want to say that, yesterday I wanted to get a haircut to make sure that I had the 1988 version of the Marine Band haircut. And just to kind of demonstrate how far we've come. And so, which I'll get back to in a minute. So, yeah, as Colonel Barkley went through the things that Chuck has done for this organization, and Brian going through how much he means to all of us. I met Chuck in 1988. When I joined the band, and I also joined the Annapolis Symphony, where Chuck was principal trombone. So we started playing together, and we had played together, I guess, for about 4 or 5 years before he joined the band. So we had gotten to know each other pretty well, and and musically we connected, and it's always been a joy to sit in a section with you. So, in keeping my remarks brief, I just want to say a couple of things that I think you need to hear, and I think everybody needs to hear. Chuck has an insecurity about him at some point, and that's an impression I get, that sometimes you don't feel worthy of the things that you do. And I just want to say how far that is from the truth. Colonel Barkley went through everything that you've done for this organization, which are a lot of activities which are vital, and this band is better for all that. But what I want to say is this organization is better because you've been here, because leadership is not about necessarily doing things, although that's a big component of it. Leadership is about influence. And the influence that you've had on this organization and the legacy that you're leaving this group is far more important than anything that you possibly could have done. And so I just want to tell you, personally, that's what you're leaving this group. And for everybody that's in this organization that feel like, well, I can't do this because I don't have the position, that has nothing to do with that. That you can be influential no matter where you are, where you're sitting, but you just have to choose to. And as Brian pointed out, Chuck never lost an opportunity to make sure that, we were at our best. And that's just vital for the health of an organization, and organizations cannot succeed and get better without people like you. And I just wanted to tell you that. And then in closing, I just wanted to mention, I did not know he was the Homeowners Association president for 13 years, which explains every time I went to their house, the garbage cans were exactly 6 inches off the curb. So Chuck, thank you. Your career has been brilliant, and it has been successful beyond measure. And I'm honored to call you a friend and a colleague. So thank you.
This is way longer than I wanted it to be. Sorry, folks. Friday afternoon, traffic. That's one of the reasons I'm getting out, is because I'm so sick of the commute. So thank you to all of you in attendance today. I'm honored and humbled by your presence here. I'm sorry that Colonel Zagurski could not be here today, but Lieutenant Colonel McKinney, thank you. Sergeant Major Gray, barracks officers, Major Steckity, Major Hall, all my brothers from the Drum and Bugle Corps that I admire so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time on a day that I know you'd probably rather be hitting the road a little bit early if possible. Others, Mike Fullwood, Master Sergeant Fullwood, good to see you. I'm glad you could make it. He just had knee surgery, so he wasn't sure he was going to be able to be here. So thank you so much. Thank you for all the kind words. Thank you, Colonel Fettig, for allowing the opportunity of my close friend John Barclay to be the retiring official here today. I see so many faces in the crowd of alums that I'm happy to see. I feel terrible if I would fail to mention any of you, so I'm going to just say thank you collectively for coming. I know he probably, as such a humble man, he wouldn't want me to mention this, but thank you, Colonel Foley, as humble as you are, for attending my ceremony today. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Lieutenant Colonel Barclay, thank you so much for the kind words. It brings to mind that saying that you're never as good as your biggest fan or as bad as your hardest critic. I'm somewhere in between, and I'm humbled by all the comments made today. And by the way, I remember on a specific trip, a golf trip to Williamsburg, where we spent a half an hour in the tall weeds looking for somebody's putter. Brand new putter, helicoptering into the weeds. I said, next time, throw it in the short grass. We did. I thank you so much to the trombone section for such a thoughtful gift. You know I'm going to hang that in my office and see it on a regular basis when I'm down there practicing and attending to business. Thank you so much. It's been my privilege and honor to serve on every audition committee for every one of our trombone players, with the exception of my replacement, who is inbound next week, Russell Sharp. I couldn't bring myself to say Sharp as a musician. I would also like to thank Darren for his remarks. And I remember that conversation. I might have had a beer in my hand at the time, which could have explained why it was an hour and a half long. But I think that it's important for everybody to come into this organization with an idea of what they're expected to be, and not just get here and feel blindsided by all the different things that you have to learn about the funny way we talk as Marines. Why isn't a door just a door? Why does it have to be a hatch? Why is a water fountain not a water fountain, but it's a scuttlebutt? Terms that are a little bit antiquated at this point, but I think it's important to know that you need to immerse yourself in the culture of the Marines that you're representing when you put this uniform on, not only past but present as well. And I'm humbled and honored to have been a member of this organization. Pat and Brian, Jan Murphy, these Marines and Marine bandsmen are the reason that I took the audition, because I was playing in various groups with them. And I was also playing in various groups with musicians from other of the service bands locally, and they just couldn't match up to what I heard from Jan, Pat, and Brian. And it was my pleasure to accept the job here after having had some success in various symphony orchestras and auditions. You only get paid if you're the last man standing. So I found the opportunity and I took it, and I knew that I had to embrace it wholeheartedly. Speaking back to Colonel Barclay, he was in my locker row. In fact, so was Colonel Colburn, Colonel Fettig at a point, Captain Nowlin. It seems like that's the locker row of power there. And I was struck immediately by Colonel Barclay and his commitment to not only being a Marine musician, but to being a United States Marine. And he set the standard for that. He has raised the bar. And if I have helped in any certain way to make us a little bit more squared away, know a little bit better about how to present ourselves in uniform, look a little sharper on the parade deck, I get that from him. He sets the bar. As Marines, for 241 years, we've been setting the bar high. And you know what? You're expected to set the bar higher, because as an organization, if you're not attaining what the organization's standard is and exceeding that, then you're going backwards. I always told my trombone students, I'm your competition. Don't idolize me, beat me, be better than me. Because if my trombone student never reaches my potential, my playing ability, and his student never reaches his, then where are we going? We're going backwards, aren't we? So as Marines, we set the bar high. We're expected to continue to raise the bar, and that's what we do. So happy that so many people made the trip from far away. Kim Miller, Vicky Onyx, Pat Corbett coming all the way from Texas, my sister and brother-in-law Doug and Siobhan up from Florida, and my immediate family here from Baltimore. I'm so proud of Sergeant Ryan Wooders, my nephew by marriage who served in Iraq, Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. And we've had a lot of good talks about what it is to be a Marine. My good friend and neighbor, Frank Kippenbrock, retired gunnery sergeant, thank you so much for being here. Pat McCorkle from my Pineapple Golf Group, thank you so much. And all of you that had endeavored to fight the traffic to get down here, as well as all my friends in the band. I know that you all were assigned here. I'm sorry, but hopefully I'll make up with it for some Matchbox pizza. So, I could not possibly have been the success that I was without my family. Anybody that's talked to me for more than 15 seconds knows how proud I am of my daughters and the women that they've grown up to be. Thank you so much. They've helped with the raising of Chesty. They are, responsible in many ways for his success. And I love them dearly. My wife of 32 years is the best wife I could have ever asked for. She has been so supportive. She started the training of Sergeant Chesty as well, then Lance Corporal, pre-FC probably Chesty at the time. He was recruit Chesty, come to think of it. He wasn't even technically in yet, and she taught him to sit. She housebroke him because shortly after we got him, I was on tour, and it was a 7.5-week tour. So they were responsible for the success that Chesty had. And I also, before I go any further, can't tell you what a great mother my wife has been to my daughters and what an example she sets and what a rock she's been for me. I also would like to thank my parents who unfortunately could not be with us today due to illness and just an inability to travel. When did I eat peanut butter? It feels like I have peanut butter in my mouth all of a sudden. They gave me a love of music through my mother's singing and playing the piano and the organ and directing the choir at church. My father and my father's father were both trombone players. Needless to say, they didn't quite take it to the extent that I have, but it was sort of a legacy, and it was going to happen. So anyway, in closing, I'd just like to say that if I rubbed anybody the wrong way, I never intended to. It was simply the best of intentions to get the best out of everybody around me, to raise me up too. Because anything that I would tell you, I certainly would have expected of myself. I will apologize. That may have been a weakness in, as Brian said, in this language of sort of cutting the corners, but get right to the point. What do we need to beat around the bush, right? At any rate, it's been a fantastic ride. In the words of Major Carroll, the Marine Corps owes me nothing. I owe it all to the Marine Corps. Now, and last thing, protect the brand. We hear about that in the NFL. We now have protect what you've earned is a motto that we see. It's absolutely true. We need to make sure that we are doing everything we can individually and collectively to raise the bar. And I would like everybody to think of me as being somebody that would be there for you in a heartbeat if you needed me for whatever it was, you know. Take care of each other, and Semper Fidelis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've asked Colonel Feddick if he would play Semper Fidelis, John Philip Sousa's Semper Fidelis, one last time for me, and I'm going to sit down and listen and enjoy the performance. Thank you so much.
After we finish Semper Fidelis, we will play the Marine Sim as well, one more time in honor of Chuck's career, and then I'll invite you to join Chuck and his family out in the lobby for refreshments. Thank you all for coming, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you out in the lobby.